this together later. Fuck.
The video.
Yeah, fuck, whatever. Watch two videos, people. Get over it.
Episode 398, part 1. Welcome.
Actually, technically, it's part 2.
Oh, part 2, yeah. Part 2 drops first.
But we're recording it first.
Non-chronological experimental podcasting.
Yeah. What are you doing? You're fluffy and I love you. All right. Let's do it. Let's talk parasocial relationships.
Let's get into the parasocial hell.
Kind of like it. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 398 of Cinematary. For those who are probably confused, Andrew has now joined us. But in this,
no, I'm Jessica Carr.
Oh, you're right. Jessica has some feature changes, but Jessica's still here.
Yeah.
And in this part, we're going to be continuing our Cahiers du YouTube.
It's our Cahiers du Cinema series.
Cahiers du Cinema series. Cahiers du YouTube series with Shannon Strucci's video essay. What is it? Fake Friends, Fake Friends, Parasocial Hell. Is that?
That's right. The true long title is Fake Friends Episode 2, Parasocial Hell. But it's one of those things where, kind of like with the alt-right playbook, it's part of a series. You don't need to watch the series. I actually have only watched maybe half of the first part. It's not as interesting as part 2, which stands on its own as a feature film, which she kind of says in the credits, she wanted to make a feature-length YouTube video.
Okay. Well, you've seen this at least twice. So just give us a kind of a rough idea of what the thesis of this is.
Yeah. So I'm sure most people listening to this are familiar with what a parasocial relationship is. It's kind of become a common parlance on social media, especially in the podcasty YouTube sphere. But if you are unfamiliar, a parasocial relationship is essentially a one-sided relationship where the member who is actually having the relationship is kind of viewing the other person's life through some sort of medium, whether that be television or live streaming or podcasting or whatever. You feel like you know them, you don't actually know them. And this is the thing that actually goes back into much earlier eras. The first episode of Parasocial Hell talks a lot about talk show hosts, but with the particular era of the internet that we are living in now, parasocial relationships have just kind of exploded and become a much bigger part of audience members' lives and much more of a concern in the lives of creators who kind of need to negotiate that boundary with their audience. And so this video, Fake Friends, Parasocial Hell, is an almost 2-hour-long exploration of how this phenomenon has manifested in the lives of many YouTube and Twitch creators. But one of the things that's really interesting about it is that it does not restrict itself to just talking about, the type of parasocial relationship that, is most common. It also kind of is constantly zigging and zagging and making lots of connections to other things that you might not consider parasocial relationships, right? So the first stop on her tour through all of these is actually about a romantic quote unquote relationship between a zoo penguin and a cardboard cutout anime girl that was put inside the zoo habitat. And she also talks about robot animals that are given to elderly people suffering from dementia. She talks about the famous monkey experiment where the monkey has these two mothers, the robotic metal mother that feeds the monkey, and then the soft cuddly mother that does not provide any sort of nutrients for the monkey. And it kind of goes all over the place, but it's sort of amazing. I don't know that much about Shannon Strucci. I've not watched many of her other YouTube videos other than this one. This is actually her most popular video by like almost double what the second most popular video is. But it's sort of become like this foundational text for understanding like the modern phenomenon of parasocial relationships. And I think that like as a documentary, as a piece of cinema, this is like one of the more impressive things I've seen on YouTube. And I wanted to include it in this series primarily. I guess there's two reasons I want to include it. One is that it is very much about a thing that we've touched on in other episodes that has kind of impacted the lives of people like ContraPoints and Lindsay Ellis. And it's also relevant to us as podcasters to a certain extent. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was like the craft of this, specifically like the editing craft. I mean, that is the primary way that video essays are put together, like editing clips that already exist from other places. Shannon Strucci has like basically none of her own footage here. But I think that the editing in this video is like radical. The first 10 minutes of the video never like settles into a narration sequence, right? It's just like cutting back and forth between all these disparate things and hoping the audience, like trusting the audience to keep up and like connect the dots between all these things. And she's kind of like putting all these clips in conversation with one another in a way that feels much more like art than the explainer YouTube video essay.
The one thing I was thinking of, like in terms of just like clips with kind of background talking, is it's kind of like this almost updated, modern to a degree version of like Ken Burns. Like if you think of like a Ken Burns documentary, whether it's like baseball or Civil War, or you have like the picture with like the zoom in of the picture. It doesn't necessarily have that, but it's not like you're seeing. You don't have too many talking heads. You don't have like Ken Burns, like, on screen talking. You just kind of hear his, hear his voice or somebody's voice in the background. And then you just kind of like see these images. And it reminded me of that, but it like in a way that was, as you described it, is like they're very much like in dialogue with one another, which is less, you see less of that like in Ken Burns.
Yeah. And like, even when it does settle into the more standard, I'm explaining clips and the reason why I'm showing them to you thing, once we get like 10 minutes in, it's still kind of free flowing and free associative. Like the transitions between different topics are really abrupt. She's not drawing all those lines super clearly. And there are still parts where it becomes very like impressionistic, especially towards the end.
Yeah, and that didn't bug me because I think it feels in line. Like I think you have to kind of get on that wavelength to also understand the subject, because all of the subject matter is about how all of these things are all kind of compacted on one another, and like the creativeness and the community and the person and the people and it's all of that stuff is all stacked on one another into this, at least in my opinion, this kind of depressing.
Yeah, this is definitely like an exhausting watch. Like I watched it with Jessie, and afterwards she was like, "Man, can we watch something that doesn't make me think tomorrow night?" Because this was just a lot to process.
And like Jessica, you just popped on Kung Fu Panda.
We popped on Kung Fu Panda. That's right.
The deep cut there for our parasocial fans.
Another thing that I wanted to say about editing before we move on from that topic is that, like, I think that she's also really ambitious with how long she's willing to let clips play out. Like, video essays have a certain rhythm to them that you guys talked about last week is pretty much established by somebody like Lindsay Ellis. Yeah. And then popularized further and codified in certain ways by ContraPoints. where like there's like this snappiness, and whenever we're cutting to a clip or cutting to a quote or something, you're never expecting it to last more than like 5 or 10 seconds, because we got to get back to the narrative voice. We got to get back to the argument, right? But Shannon Strucci, like when she decides she wants to show you something, she just sits and lets you watch it for a really long time. Like you hear a lot of Eminem's Stan. You hear whenever she, I mean, I think the most emotionally heavy section of the video is whenever she shows you the streamer Jacksepticeye playing the video game That Dragon Cancer and talking about it. And she just like lets you sit and listen to him talk for like 5 minutes or so. And there's another super long clip of him later. It's like she just really commits to every single thing that she wants to talk about. And again, is like trusting the audience to follow and trusting the audience to put the pieces together and you know, make sense of this in the context of all these other, you know, detours that we've taken along the way.
Yeah. As like I think as a documentary, I think it's pretty good. I think it kind of like not only does it present the, like we've been talking about, not only does it present the kind of thesis it's getting at and the information it's trying to convey, but also like it I think she structures it in a way to feel compatible with the content itself. Like she, like it's something like we talked about last week, you know, something like Lindsay Ellis, if she's covering whether it's The Hobbit or it's a Disney movie or it's a Marvel movie or something like that, like you probably want to see a lot of like what she's referencing.
It's visual.
Yeah, and so I think that like she like Shannon Strucci does a great job of like marrying those two things all at once. It was like, I'll say this, and it's not in a dismissive way, but like a lot of this, I didn't connect with it, not necessarily because I didn't understand what was going on. I think I understood, and it made me sad what was going on. But like I understand like the desire to watch like whether it's like a Twitch stream of like somebody playing a video game or like Red Letter Media, where they talk for like 3-4 hours at a time about like a movie or stuff like that. Like I understand that stuff on like a pragmatic level. I don't want to do that at all. Like in terms of me personally, Zach, I have no desire to do that.
Right.
And so like to me, like hearing about like the relationships between, dang man, let's pop out.
Nice thunder.
Like hearing about like I don't know, like to me there's something sad. There's just something sad about like you sit there and you watch a Red Letter Media video for 3.5 hours talking about whatever movie, and like you have this relationship with these men that like you don't know and they don't know you. And like, but at the same time, I'm at least somewhat empathetic to it because I understand why that would be developed, just for, you know, like what you mentioned that like talk show hosts are like kind of an early version of this, but I think also like that's just kind of like culture in general. We have like not like incredibly well developed parasocial relationships, but you think about how people interact with it can be Marvel or DC movies or comics, or it can be political figures. It can be like different kind of parasocial relationships that we have with just like, because culture has converged in this way, in such a way that like you can go, oh, well, these people who are watching Red Letter Media videos and have like these parasocial relationships with these guys is sad. I'm like, yeah, but you have a parasocial relationship with like MSNBC or Fox News or something
one
like
of
that.
the most interesting moments of this for me is when you're watching the Red Letter Media guys talk about that like fake boyfriend VHS tape, where they're talking about like, here's a VHS tape for lonely loser women to sit at home and pretend they have a boyfriend. Like, how pathetic must you be to watch this video of somebody pretending to be your boyfriend. But like, they are completely unaware of the fact that they are providing the exact same service for their viewers. Not the idea of like a fake romantic relationship, of course, but I mean the idea of just like people sitting down and watching to pretend they have friends, or to pretend they're friends with these people specifically. Like that is sort of the appeal of podcasts on one level, right? I mean, we do listen to them in order to be informed, but we also listen to them for the personalities and just to like, there's a sense of comfort and entertainment that comes from hearing the voice of somebody that you know very well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have like I don't feel like I know him, but I've been listening to Mark Maron for a number of
Right.
years now. Like like I know when like the different things he does, like in a conversation, like he always asks who are your guys. I don't. It's very entertaining to me. Like
Right.
like you just kind of wait for him to do that. I was listening to actually a Mark Maron podcast earlier today, and I think that I thought a lot more about that relationship with Maron and his podcast more recently, because of just kind of like I felt really like sad for him whenever he was going through, when Lynn Shelton, his partner, died. And like I felt really sad for him, and I like listened to, like, you listen to the podcast and stuff that he did afterwards, and like I did legitimately feel like this deep sadness for this person. I don't know him.
Right.
I'm not to the level of the people who like send him stuff, but I'm just like, this is a person who I've listened to in a podcast from his previous, like, again, I know this, his previous 2 divorces, to other relationships, to this one that was deeply meaningful. And like hearing just how he's progressed, even just as like a person, like his thought process now,
Right.
like he's just a different thinker than he was when I started listening to it. And so like when Lynn Shelton died, it was really sad. But at the same time, it wasn't, I don't know. Am I better or worse than like these other parasocial?
Well, I think that it's a complicated topic where it's not as simple as parasocial relationships bad, right? Because on a certain level, it is instinctual. It's human nature. I feel like there's so much like human vulnerability on display in this video. I'm sure there are people who have parasocial relationships with us if they've listened to this podcast for long enough. Right?
Shout out to our parasocial relationships.
And I am deeply grateful that the people who listen to us, because I know there are people who listen to us, though we never hear from them, aren't fucking creeps. Like, thank you for not being fucking creeps.
We have the best parasocial relationships. You all are fantastic. If you have Zach t-shirts, that's cool, but you keep it to yourself.
There's when we did the Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song episode, and Zach was like, please just reach out to us. We want to know who's listening. And we got one like very kind, heartfelt email that did like kind of keep us going for a little while.
Well, and if Corey's still listening to this, Corey, that's still my favorite fan. Like,
it's the best fan letter we've
ever gotten.
Yeah.
I still love it.
But like on a certain level, I'm kind of glad that we don't have as much interaction, because that's really stressful. Like, the only time that the podcast has gotten a lot of attention all at once was when we were doing our Letterbox series and we had Todd Gaines on, and we didn't know some of the icky stuff about Todd Gaines. And like, there were people like, dragging our name through the mud on Twitter. And like, I think that stuff like that would be happening all the time if we had a more active, like, parasocial audience. Like the McElroy brothers, that shit is insane. I cannot imagine being the McElroy brothers and like trying to hold yourself to that standard of like all good vibes all the time, and like being these pure good cuddly boys, but having as big of an obsessive fan base as they have. Like, that just seems like parasocial hell.
Yeah, and that's why I say like it's not. I think she gets to like the messiness of it. She talks a little bit about, it's less about the people, and it's more, it's as always, it's less about the people and more about the mechanisms in place.
Right.
Like the internet fosters that type of fosters that type of relationship. And I think the one thing I was thinking about while watching this, because I think the question is probably like, why now? Why is it now? Like, it's this festering, and I think it's because the one thing that the internet did was it opened up all of these different avenues, all of these different highways to like the whole world. Like you think about like the early part of the 20th century, you had like newspapers and things like that, and that was but it was you were just congested in your community, like that source of information was just going there. And as you got like television and radio and things like that, it expanded out a little bit, and and honestly you started to have those parasocial relationships. You think about like radio programs like Little Orphan Annie, like you're telling me that's not a parasocial relationship. You're thinking about like people who would watch like Walter Cronkite on the evening news, like that's not a parasocial relationship.
Right.
And I think as it continued to expand out, like it feels, it's like, why is this now? Well, it feels natural to me. You have people who literally anywhere in the world can watch a Red Letter Media thing.
Yeah.
And they're interacting with these people who, if this was 1901, would not have any, connection or any knowledge of this person even existing.
Well, they wouldn't be able to be in dialogue with the person.
Exactly.
Right? Jack Septiceye talks about this at one point in the video, where he says, like, if you go make a movie, you spend several years making a movie, and then you put it out, and then you get to talk about it with some people. But he makes a video, uploads it the next day, and then he can go read the comments immediately. And we're just kind of right in that loop forever. Yeah. And like that's the mechanism you're talking about, right? Like when the way in which an artist communicates their audience changes, and the way in which an audience gets to communicate back with the artist like explodes in the way that it has, like that fundamentally changes that relationship. And like I think that's one reason why people like Natalie Wynn, ContraPoints, and Lindsay Ellis have just like had such a bad time on the internet, because like they are in dialogue with people who watch them and are just like kind of, I don't know, every word is kind of surveilled and scrutinized.
Yeah, and it's probably incredibly exhausting. Because you think about it, it's not even like it was, you think of like the movie Hail Caesar, like that's all about the Josh Brolin character kind of working as that like fixer in the middle of like the movie star and like the fan and the public.
Right. There's this whole machine that's
keeping the stars away from like what actually people are talking about.
Yeah.
And with like Natalie Wynn and Lindsay Ellis, it's like, no, you got the direct line, because you can send something via Twitter or Instagram, and it's not like it's going through. They don't have people. They're not Beyonce, so they don't have people to like what. So it's going directly to them, and you're just giving them. You think it's like, oh, it's just my comment. That's not that much, but it's your comment times 200,000.
It's a sea of your comments.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, that's why they can't handle it.
And I mean, if you're living in 1901 or whatever, and you wanted to write a letter to the person who's doing the new Little Orphan Annie broadcast, like you could do that, but there's a lot of friction and a lot of space and time between.
And there's also somebody who's filtering those. I mean,
there is, yeah.
Like it's been like we've had this dialogue at the newspaper when it comes to like letters to the editor, because we really don't get many letters to the editor anymore, because it's just fucking old people, because they're the ones who like,
if they have a thing they want to say, they just post as a Facebook status, right?
Exactly. Like people, they go, well, why aren't we getting? It's because there's like, why would you go through the newspaper to do that? Like people don't necessarily view that as like the public space for dialogue anymore. They can just, if they really wanted to get something out there, they would just put it on Facebook. Like we ran a column recently from this parent talking about schools, and technically she posted it in one of the local Facebook groups ahead of time and was getting feedback there. And it was really interesting, because then I got coffee with her after the column ran, and it was very much two different feedback loops. In the group that she knew, she was getting all this positive feedback and it was fine. Then she put it in the newspaper and it was put to a different audience and a different public, and it was a lot of negative stuff. And so it was like this weird, like and so she was like, I just had to stop looking because, I didn't want to just get positive feedback, but at the same time, like the negative stuff, it's just these people I don't know just kind of going, you're an idiot.
And I think, like, from the perspective of a creator, it's very hard not to look at that stuff, right? Like, whenever Cinematary was blowing up for the whole Todd Gaines thing, I was, name searching us and responding to people, and eventually you, Zach, were like, just back off, just don't engage.
There's a lot of me going, Andrew, you got to stop looking at comments.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, because I don't think, I think traditionally people would be like, well, no, you need to hear that feedback. But I think this show, like these creators could tell you, and this shows that like there's a threshold of feedback that after a while you're like, yeah, you don't need this. Like you can tune it out.
I mean, people need feedback that's constructive from people they trust, right?
And people who are invested in like that's what I always tell people from my position. It's like I listen to people who are invested in said issue and are like engaging in it critically and thinking about it. Random ass yelling person I don't care about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Gosh, there's something else I was going to say and I have forgotten it.
You mentioned a couple of the figures as well. I'm curious to maybe talk a little bit about somebody, because you have like those people like gosh, I forgot his name, Jacksepticeye. Jacksepticeye. But then you have somebody who she uses a lot of footage from, like Bo Burnham, and Bo Burnham's whole thing
is like a vocal critic of all this.
Yeah, is like he's engaging in what we're talking about, but also is very vocal about, like she shows a lot of like this. I believe it's a stand-up special.
I think it's Make Happy.
Yeah, where he has like a song about how. And Bo Burnham is kind of an interesting figure also because he also is like very open about like, I'm a privileged white guy who got really lucky, but then also like I want this affirmation and I want, and so I mean, what do you make of like, I guess the Bo Burnham, the self-aware person?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because Bo Burnham, I actually was just looking at the fake, I was scrubbing through fake friends on YouTube and I saw somebody left a comment saying, I'm just gonna read the comment. Ironically, I feel, oh gosh, just clicked away from it. I'm going back. Hold on. The comment is, ironically, I feel like Bo Burnham constantly, oh God, sorry, I need to mute the video. This will be a fun edit for you, Zach. They said, ironically, I feel like Bo Burnham constantly dunking on parasocial relationship culture may contribute to fans seeing him as authentic and therefore feeling attached to him. Who knows? Maybe he does it on purpose. And like that special, Make Happy, where he's kind of like talking about the relationship between creator and audience while also being kind of honest about his own mental health struggles. That's something that I feel like got magnified like crazy last year when he put out Inside, because this kind of speaks to something that the Shannon Strucci video is about, like the way in which parasocial relationships form between people who are hurting in some way and a creator who gives them hope in some way. Like she talks about this with John Darnielle of the Mountain Goats and how he just like has people coming up to him at concerts, like talking to them about how like his music saved their life and stuff like that. And that is a thing that I think a lot of people feel for Bo Burnham after Inside came out. Like they felt very heard or seen by like the way in which he gave voice to those mental health struggles. And so like, I think that's a really interesting example of how the whole the formula of parasocial relationships bad is too reductive, right? Like people on a certain level need role models and they need figures in their life that kind of give them inspiration and give them hope and feel like they have a sense of comfort with. But there is definitely like a limit to like what that can be or where that can go. That's unhealthy, right?
Well, that's why I prefaced the beginning, like, like the watching the game streams and the 3 hour, like that kind of stuff. Like I understand, and I understand, like if you want to watch that, like that's awesome for you. Like for me personally, Zach, I'm like that's just like I don't think I could ever see myself. like I'll tune into your, I'll pop in for your Twitch streams for a little while just to make a stupid comment and then bounce out.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, like I don't think I could sit there for. I mean, how long do you do that in total?
2 hours. 2 hours a
Yeah,
week.
I couldn't sit there for the whole 2 hours.
And that's nothing. I mean, most people who actually do streaming will stream for like easy 5-6 hours a day, you know. And there are people who do it like the majority of their waking life, which is just insane to me. I don't understand how you could do that.
Yeah, and I mean, they make money and such, so it's just like, you know,
I mean,
whatever.
that's how they do it. They do it with money. Yeah.
Like, I mean, whatever. Like, you're making money, you make money how you want and enjoy yourself. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. That's why, yeah, I agree. Like, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think some people just need those outlets, and if that's the outlet, it's kind of like the whole thing of, you know, yeah, you may not agree with it, you may think it's sad, you may think it's bad in your own mind, but if this person, if it's helping this person, if they're not hurting themselves or other people, like, just let them do it. Like, it's fine.
Right.
But
all those comments under that red letter, those red letter media videos, that's like, well, I guess I'm gonna postpone killing myself for the next hour while I watch this video. Like, that's just creepy and weird and bad. I feel like
because that what maybe I misunderstood it, but like that's like a running kind of bit or something. That's like this kind of semi irony, like terrible. This like no, it's not a good bit, but it's like it's like a whole running thing. But yeah, I don't know. I've you know, that's kind of my thing. Is it's like, yeah, I think, but that's why I found it really interesting, because I think like older people who maybe look at this think it's like what like this is just sad. Like, this is you have like this need to like watch this thing. But again, that's why I brought up earlier, like, I think to a degree, there have been like inklings of parasocial relationships with like the advent of movies and television. Like, you don't think people like had semi parasocial relationships with like Marilyn Monroe or Cary Grant, or, you know, or
Absolutely.
on TV, watching TV with like Johnny Carson and Walter Cronkite. And like, I mean, that's just like, it's just kind of that's, you know, that dependence and that kind of comfort from seeing that person or whatever. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just I don't think it was as defined as Shannon Strucci put it in this documentary.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm trying to think of other stuff that we haven't covered.
What did you think about this one as like a movie compared to the other things that we've covered on the series there?
I definitely would agree that it's a movie. I thought it was if we were looking at this one compared to the docs, well, so compared to the docs,
I guess like the three we've done that feel like, you know, feature films are the Charlottesville documentary, and then like the 3-parter Lindsay Ellis thing.
Yeah, like I said last week. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. The Charlottesville one for sure. If you watched all of the Lindsay Ellis ones in one sitting, in this one, because I think it kind of it covers its information in a way that I think it provided some clarity, and I think it engaged, like I said before, it engaged with the concept that it was kind of getting at in a way that was kind of fascinating to watch.
You feel yourself kind of like getting more and more sucked into it as it goes along, right? Like, this is something that you could define and give just a couple examples of, but she gives you like, you know, dozens of examples.
Well, and as you've described, she doesn't only just kind of go like name examples. She makes you sit there while the guy does the 5-6 minute long monologue on his grandmother dying. You know, like, you sit there and watch the whole thing. She could just be, you know, and that's what I think separates like the video essay from the text. Because think about, like, you could probably write a book or like an essay about parasocial relationships, but do you really capture and understand the concept if you like
Right.
wrote out? And then he talked about his grandmother dying while this clip from a video game that these parents made when after their
Hmm.
child died from cancer. Like that wouldn't like you would kind of go, oh, okay, but like rather than explaining it, she just plays out the clip.
And
So then,
yeah, and it's
yeah,
not just that like she's talking about visual media, therefore she needs to be visual. Like it feels to me like the duration and the medium here are serving more of like an emotional purpose. Like by the time I'm halfway through this thing, I feel trapped by it, which I think is like how she wants you to feel. Like both that is the way that both creators can kind of feel when they're like feeling like they're being held hostage by their audience, and also the way that a lot of those audience members feel, where they feel like they have this like they have to hold on to this commitment to this person they're like obsessed with. Like it is like a spiral into madness at times. You know, there's that Richard Dreyfuss, the
oh yeah,
guy
yeah,
who wants to meet Richard Dreyfuss is doing it in like a parodic way, but you know there's lots. Think about something like the King of Comedy. You know
hmm
that's a great example of a parasocial relationship. Like there are people who get like so obsessed with a particular media figure that it becomes like a curse for them.
yeah.
Right.
She mentioned which I know we've talked about the movie Ingrid Goes West. She mentions that,
Mm.
but yeah, she did miss talking a little bit about the King of Comedy, or even more recently, I think that this came out before Joker, correct?
This definitely came out before Joker, but yeah,
Okay.
that's another good touch point. Yeah.
Something like that also I think is trying to engage with more of like the
Mm.
modern concept of that.
Yeah. If there's one criticism I have of the video, it's that, and I don't even think it's even fair to say, but it's that the video is very much curated around pet obsessions of Shannon Strucci. You know, like because she is who she is and her tastes are what they are, she's like a very particular type of nerd. Like she's going to talk about things like One Piece and
hmm
D&D and the Mountain Goats, etc. Or like, are these the best examples? Maybe, maybe not. The case by case basis. But
Yeah, I don't.
it
Oh, go ahead.
also makes it feel a little personal as well.
Well, and I think that's just part of. I think that's just part of the video essay. Like
Yeah.
you just kind of want to do that. You know, Yeah, and think about it now. I mean, that's something that's necessarily unique to just the video essay. I mean, you have directors do that. Think about Quentin Tarantino does
Oh yeah.
shit in his movies
Absolutely.
all the time for no fucking
Yeah.
reason other than that he
He
just does
likes
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about like in the video essay I did about the Beethoven piece, I have
Hmm.
this whole sequence that's just kind of like this montage of like cars driving and stuff. It has nothing to do with the song. It was just it fit with
Right.
the piece of music at that time, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Fuck, I'm gonna do that."
One
And
thing
so
we haven't talked about a whole lot over the course of this series is our own video essays that we've made on this channel. We used to
I've
have
referenced
kind of
that
a
last week.
rhythm where I was trying to make one a year, and I did
Same,
that for like 4 years.
yeah.
And then like I was going to make one the year of the pandemic, and I sort of lost my artistic drive to do it. But
Oh yeah, me
um,
too.
you know, those video essays on the Cinematary channel, the oldest videos on the YouTube channel, if people want to go look at them,
Mhm.
are very much, at least for me, inspired by the like a mode that was sort of codified on Left Tube, especially with Lindsay Ellis and ContraPoints.
Oh yeah,
And like the things that I'm including in those video essays are absolutely a product of like my own personal tastes and stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
um, I'm trying to think of a really good example, but like most of the stuff in the slow cinema video, like, are these the best possible examples? I don't know. These are some of my favorites, right? Like I want to talk about Moonlight being similar to Beau Travail,
Yeah.
but maybe that's not what an academic would have chose to focus on.
Yeah, no, I definitely. I mean, Lindsay Ellis is a big influence on the essays that I did. Every frame of painting
Oh,
is a
absolutely.
big,
Yeah.
but also, and I don't necessarily like or agree with him as a critic anymore, but like the rhythm to top movies of the year videos that David Ehrlich does
Yeah.
is actually a big influence just in terms of like the rhythm of mine.
He's a good editor. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, like I really don't like his criticism anymore. His not to get on a whole thing,
It's
but like
too smarmy.
well, his writing, he likes to start like at like the top of the mountain and like roll down, and I'm like, sometimes just write the fucking thing, like write about the
Right.
movie. But there's something about the way like he structures those where he kind of does like this montage of all like pretty much all the different movies from that year with the theme throughout by songs that kind of play into the movie but also don't play into the
Right.
those were actually pretty influenced, and I still watch those like occasionally today just because there's
Mhm.
something about like the marriage of the music and the rhythm and the editing and in the movies, that those are also kind of influential for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. This one was good. I mean, again, made me sad. I didn't like. I didn't like it, not because I didn't think it was good, or it was just like, oh, I hope these people are finding, mainly it's just I hope these people are finding like
Peace.
healthy like engagement with them and other people. Like while I think if you're not hurting yourself or other people and you're engaging in this, like that's fine. There is still some like the reason you're engaging with these people, and they make this point in the essay, is because humans naturally want to engage with one another, and this is just how you're doing that. So hopefully these people are also like engaging with people with other humans in person as well, not just watching red letter media videos.
Right. If you, listener, would like to talk about your parasocial relationship with us in a non-freaky way, I would like to read the perspective of our audience members on this topic and how it pertains to Cinematary specifically.
I don't know if I'm prepared to hear that, but yeah, I guess.
Just don't be weird. Just be normal.
No, just do it. I think I think deep down I'm somewhat curious if there is anything. All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of the show. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we list the one movie that we talked about in this episode. Head over, if you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Cinematary. We have our $1 and $5 tiers. So if you just kind of want to toss us a buck to say, hey, we don't have a parasocial deep relationship with you, but we like what you do, you can do that. Thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Corey Willingham, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marsathi, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. What are we wrapping up this series with next week?
Yeah, so next week we have a double feature of one video by H. Bomber Guy, very important left tuber who we've kind of not touched on at all. He's actually a collaborator of Shannon Strucci's. She mentions him in Fake Friends, Parasocial Hell. But one of his most recent videos, which is called Vaccines, A Measured Response. And then the other one is called In Search of a Flat Earth by Dan Olson. Dan Olson is a creator who kind of flies under the radar for a lot of people. He's not like big and flashy. Most of his videos are him just kind of standing in front of a white screen and talking. But he has put out some really impressive work recently. He did a 2.5 hour long explainers on NFTs that is like the expose on NFTs. If you don't feel like you understand that and want to, like, you should go watch that. But I chose these two videos specifically, Vaccines and In Search of a Flat Earth, as a way of wrapping up this series by looking at how left tube / bread tube is trying to respond to new and more chaotic social phenomena. So most of the stuff that we've talked about has kind of historically sort of come out between like 2014 and 2018-ish. And the stuff that's discussed in Vaccines and In Search of a Flat Earth, these both came out in the past year or so, and they are both about different forms of conspiracy theories. because it is a lot easier to, debunk right-wing talking points like the alt-right playbook does than, like hotwire somebody's brain who's like been totally brainwashed by conspiracism. So there's like anti-vax conspiracy theory in the H Bomber Guy video, and then the flat Earth / spoiler QAnon stuff going on in the Dan Olson video. And I just think it would be worth talking about like the effectiveness or lack thereof at trying to tackle something as complicated and difficult as conspiracism in the format of a YouTube video essay. So that's next week.
Yeah, that sounds. I think we're gonna need to do a series. It's like we might do a Kung Fu Panda series after this. I'm not even joking. I think we need to do like a nice, like light, breezy series after this.
Yeah. What's like the lawful good equivalent of October? What can we do that's just nice? Hayao Miyazaki series?
I kind of want to do that. That sounds great. I don't even care if there's like a real like bent. I just need like a nice palate cleanser.
Yeah.
All right. Until next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Don't